bringing you the latest news, game updates, insights, highlights, and everything Liberty Hockey. This is Rock the Rink, where Liberty Hockey lives.
It's been a while since we've seen you, but time to recap the national tournament for all 5 levels of Liberty Hockey. Joining me today, Annie, Corey, Pat Strawn, Justin will be our 4th, and we continue on here. Do you like that?
I did.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Men's Division 1 eventually lose to the champs in Adrian, a tough contest. But let's start off here. Their first game, Pat, against Mary. They take it 2-1.
Yeah, it was a very solid performance by them. Good opening round, too. They kind of dictated play for most of the game, and Mary did have a late flurry later on in the third to try to make a final push, and Hunter had to make a few big saves to be able to keep Liberty with a tight game. But, yeah, that game was basically all about the goaltending, too, right? Because on the other end, I believe it was Hayden playing for them, who, for those that remember him during D2 days, he won a couple natties for them. But, yeah, I mean, both of them played very well, and that's why the score was so tight at 2-1. Not a lot of special teams played, too, so both teams being very disciplined as well.
I think when you think of Mary and Liberty, I was expecting more like a 6-3 game, truthfully. When I saw it was 2-1, I was kind of like, wow, what's going on in this one?
Yeah. But, I mean, that's credit both goaltenders, right? And, sometimes even through a lot of the games, because I know we saw some scores get super inflated, and then other games were super tight, and you're like, whoa, that was but I mean, just credit really how the two goaltenders played. That's what I really equated to.
Yeah, when I saw the first round matchup, it makes me a little nervous just because I know Mary's ceiling is pretty high.
Yeah.
And they won at least 1 or 2 against Minot this year. In the regular season, so that kind of makes you think, beating a number 1 team. So it's one of those things that the teams just got to bring their A game in order to win, and obviously they did enough, and then Hunter did his thing, and they got the win there.
Yeah, same thing there when they were playing Mary. I mean, you're pretty nervous, especially when it got pretty tight there at the end of the game. They were a tough team. Watching them in person, I'd never seen Mary play in person before. I was really impressed, and I think that after that game, it was a big sigh of relief, just being able to get out of that round 1, not the easiest round 1 they've ever been faced with. You felt pretty confident going out of that game into game 2. It felt like a really good team win for round 1.
Did they wear their white gloves?
Yes, they did.
I hate those things so bad. I put on the record, I hate them.
Did they wear the pant covers?
No, they didn't.
No,
okay.
They were all blues, white gloves, white helmets,
Yeah.
I wonder what their coach is like. It'd be interesting to talk to him.
I bet you they love him.
You think just like a northern guy, though, you'd think he'd probably be a bit more of a traditional hockey dude and be like, no, we're not wearing that stuff. It's when you watch Vegas right now and LA, they have those chrome buckets. I hate them both.
Yeah, but that's part of the brand.
The game's changing. You got
I'm not, right?
Before we get on to the game against Adrian, which Liberty eventually lost, talk about the first opening couple of rounds and all the upsets. It was the most exciting few days of ACHA play that I can remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Pitt, they had 2 big upsets for them, right? To be able to beat 2 teams ranked higher. Missouri State, very good job by them.
Who took down Niagara? That's the one I'm trying to remember.
Was
the
it
poor man's Adrian?
Oswego State?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, which kind of, that became crazy because it took Ohio in overtime to beat them.
Yeah.
Right? So then we're all kind of like, whoa,
who is this group?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, very good, exciting play. A lot of upsets that opening round. I think between, by the time it got to the quarters, it kind of leveled out. It was, I believe, mostly top 10 teams outside of Pitt. So, it was pretty interesting. Oh, no, and Purdue Northwest, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say, who did they beat again?
They beat Maryville. That was
their that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's welcome. You're playing at home, basically, for Maryville, and then you're out in your first game, which is tough, but still,
And, Purdue Northwest, to me, is, that's the team probably of the future. They're still pretty young, but I didn't realize they're only 5 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they've already made the quarterfinal. And they won the GLCHL over Adrian, right? They beat them in the tournament championship.
Yeah.
Right?
That's massive.
So, now, you think about all those things. Now, 2 years in a row, they've gone to the tournament. And, to make the quarters in your second time being at the national tournament, that's a team to look out for.
I'm kind of curious right now, like where is even Purdue Northwest located at?
It is in like near Indiana Tech.
Yes,
Okay.
because we looked this up. It's not like
it's Indiana.
Yeah,
All right.
it's like an offshoot of I guess the
Real
main
Purdue. Yeah, for sure.
But
That makes
like
sense.
West.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Good one, Annie.
It's a really good location,
Yeah.
especially for hockey, because you got a lot of those hockey states right around there.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. All right, moving on. Liberty would eventually fall 4-2 with an empty net goal to the eventual champ in Adrian, and another game in which Hunter Verostic was big. And good to see Sam Feemster score 2 power play goals, but unfortunately the Flames ultimately fail in this one.
Yeah, it was unfortunate too to see. Not that Sam scored 2 goals, like that was great, but like how he scored, right? Like shot from the point, gets either a tip or he knocks home the rebound, and you're kind of like, that's what you guys should have been doing the whole game. Right. Like, and I know hindsight's 20/20, but like, I mean, a team like Adrian and going against a goalie like the Cottneys, you knew that was the kind of
You
style.
had to get traffic,
play,
right?
Yeah. And so, unfortunately for Liberty, a little too late, and a game too that didn't see too many calls. Like that's the last 10 minutes saw a ton of calls for some reason, and including I know for Liberty. When they built momentum, they made it 2-1, and a questionable call on Finch led to Adrian going back on the power play to make it 3-1. Then we got a power play to make it 3-2, which I felt was a makeup call for that Finch one. And then Adrian eventually got the empty netter. But yeah, it was just
Makes it exciting at least.
it did.
Yeah.
It made for an exciting last 5 minutes where you're kind of like, huh. So, but yeah, unfortunately, Liberty couldn't pull it out, and Adrian would eventually go on to win the tournament, which made it the second year in a row Liberty would lose the eventual champ.
It's not surprising in some ways, I feel like, that Adrian able to take it. A solid team, top through bottom, with a really good goaltender.
Yeah.
And I don't think they make many mistakes. That's the big thing. I remember going back and thinking about the games Liberty played here. They're just like, if they're in trouble in the defensive zone, off the glass and out. Like, they don't care. And then they'll set up a neutral zone forecheck and try to create a turnover.
Yeah, and also I think Coach Astalos, how many times have we said, one of the best coaches in the league.
Yeah.
Like, I think that championship game showed that even more because UNLV was all over them that first period, right? And it was still 0-0. But the adjustments he made for the second and third, basically the shot selection became pretty close. And then Adrian was able, since they were so seasoned and also knew the pain of losing last year, like that's what propelled them to be able to get it done.
Yeah, and after just watching Adrian play a bunch of different games, that team is so well conditioned. Like they just never stopped. Even like in the dying minutes of Liberty's game, when like you knew that they were going to win, they're still like out there, causing turnovers and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, to win the game, they needed to be able to get traffic in front of the net, make things happen there. But it was just so hard to get pucks in deep. Adrian kept chipping the puck, making him skate, and Liberty was just kind of on their heels, and it made them hard. They got tired and. I just think Adrian is a well-oiled machine, and seeing them, especially in that final game, like you mentioned, it was so close the whole time, but they were the team in the third period that was better conditioned.
And also, they roll 4 lines. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. They can roll 4 lines without much separation from top to bottom, which is huge.
Yeah, and I think, too, when you have – we've talked about it throughout the year. I know Andy did a story when Adrian came here. Their depth of scoring. Yeah. Right? Like, that is huge. Right. That's the biggest thing. Like, you don't see – I think they have 10-plus guys with 20-plus points on this season, right? Like, a handful of them with 30-plus, a few with 40-plus. Like, when you have that kind of production consistently throughout your entire lineup, like you just talked about, with you have the ability to roll 4 lines without much separation. And, like, that was, I think, the key for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with that, I think it's if you have that top to bottom kind of consistency, it really opens up the freedom to be creative. Yeah. In which, like, obviously, did you guys see the fake Michigan goal?
Yes.
That goal was
so like just little things like that. It's like, hey, those are the things you can work on when you have your base set. You don't have to work on those little things when you're already kind of there. So it was unfortunate that Liberty became a highlight reel on the.
Unfortunately,
It was pretty cool to see.
Well, congratulations to Coach Astalos and the rest of Adrian Bulldogs. Champions this year, Murdoch Cup winners. Focusing now, not too much on the offseason for LU, but let's kind of dip our toes a little bit into what this team may look like next year. Let's go through the list that we've compiled of, we know Surefire not coming back. So Foltz, Verostic, Bartel, Schwenke, Clark, Ottenbright, Albers, Bladen, and Gammer. That is a lot of forwards.
Yeah.
You're going to have a very different looking forward group next season.
Yeah, and probably have a lot of youthful energy that could be good for the program too. Like we've seen, and we'll touch more on this when we do the off-season show, but we've seen how a key recruiting class can spark your team. Ohio is a prime example of that with the last 2 years of how good a young group can do for your team. But also, don't even realize this, but Minot State 2 years ago, they were a well-balance of experience players and youthful energy that help provide a lot of depth of scoring the year they won as well. So it is possible Liberty could still be there in a position to not just be a top 10 team, but make a solid push as well.
You're losing 5 guys in your top 9 forward group. That's the one thing where I get you on the mix, but that's asking a lot of a freshman or a first-year class to come in. Now, a couple guys I'd love to see play more minutes. One is the guy that scored 2 power play goals in Feemster. I thought he had a really good year. And then I think Finch is going to get some top-line time, obviously. But when you're bringing in that many fresh faces, it's going to be a very different-looking team forward-wise. But most impactful is going to be the loss of Verostic.
Yeah.
And I think we've said that all season long. When you've got a goaltender of his caliber that definitely cured or hit a lot of sins, if you will, in the defensive zone. It's going to be a different year next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've even talked about people aren't going to realize how vital he had been on the back end for the group. And then also too, I
think they realize.
So, but then you also lose a lot of leadership, I believe.
Yeah, true.
Everyone. All of the guys that wore a letter this year is gone now, too. So now you need new guys to also step up in that. And then how many times have we talked about how national experience, it just matters, right, down the lineup. And now Liberty, you still have some of that. And some of your top-end talent returning is a part of that. But still, like you just said, a lot of holes to fill.
Before we move on totally from that, the one good news is that you are getting back Versalono, Olsen, and Calendike, your top line for essentially the last 2 years, is going to be back with the team. So that's good news. Heading into next year as a whole in men's Division I, 2 questions. Who do you think is a front runner for next year's Murdoch Cup? The all too early predictions season, right, has begun already. And then where do you think Liberty is going to stack up? Now, I know not all the recruits have come in, but there's been a few trickles, a few notes that have come out about guys that are coming into the program. Where do you see Liberty, and who do you see as the top dog next season?
I think it's, the classic Minot. I think they're returning most of their guys. I think Adrian loses a few.
What about Ohio is the one I'm curious about. They're just so young and so talented. Do you think?
Yeah, I just don't. I honestly, they've kind of worn off for me.
Okay.
Personally.
He's I don't care about their toys. They're not special.
That's great. They've proven that they can't get it done the last 2 or 3 years.
Right. All right.
Those top
that's
guys.
fair.
They're exciting to watch, and
I
love it when they're here. But if you can't.
They're kind of like the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they go 1-3 against Liberty in the season, and they think they're going to win a championship, it's just not going to happen. So
1-4.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
even worse. So I think for me, when I watched Niagara here at home against Liberty, I thought that they looked systematically sound.
Yeah.
So I could be dead wrong, but if I'm right, it's crazy. So I think Niagara is going to be a Final Four team next year.
I like that prediction, and Pat knows I've been high on Niagara for the last 2 years. The only thing that worries me is, though, their big defenseman, Kenny Loft, is done. Yep. At least he should be. It's who knows with ACHA play, there's no listing, but he's their top pairing guy, so you have to replace some big minutes with him leaving potentially.
Yeah, and I think going to Ohio, I agree that they should be a team that should be good, but when you lose Sam Turner, easily the best offensive defenseman in the last 2 years. And I didn't realize he was a senior. Damon, their goaltender, is a senior.
That's big.
So if he doesn't come back for that grad year as well, those are 2 on the defensive side, like those are two guys that have kind of been carrying the weight on their shoulders for you. So, like that's huge for Ohio. Like Justin just said, Minot State, they're losing, I believe, their top scorer. Everyone else is coming back. So like they'll be primed. Right back there. And I can't even remember if they lost in overtime or towards the end of the third when they lost to Ohio.
I think it was overtime.
Mm-hmm.
It was
so
overtime.
They were in it, right?
Yeah.
Like so. I mean, I think Maryville will have a chip on their shoulders because they know they should be better, and then also Purdue Northwest, right? We talked about them. That's a team I think is on the rise. They weren't super senior heavy, so like that's a good team to also be looking out for as well.
I want to go back to Niagara real quick because I know some of their guys don't like me because they said,
a
poor man's Adrian," and that's fine.
That's what you said.
Yeah, I know because I really do believe it. Like that's where they are, and
That's great. At least they're listening.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I appreciate your
the
tuning in.
viewership.
But I really like this team. I do think that, and I hate to single out a goaltender, but I'm going to do it. I think and I only saw him for 2 games all year. So obviously he did some stuff right to make them a top 10 team. But I think if they get a goalie in that can like steal a game here or there, like watch out. Then all of a sudden they're that much better. Because that one game Liberty beat them. Liberty probably did not deserve to win, but their goaltender let in like 2, one off the skate. You remember that?
Yeah,
and then
that
another one.
Goal,
And then another one very similar to that. Like 2 goals should not have gone in the back of the net.
Yeah.
Like Liberty, in all truthfulness, should have been swept that weekend series, but snuck out a win because their goaltender gave it to them.
Also, too, like I'll say this: 2 very bad calls that went in favor of Niagara that weekend, though, to lead to them having success.
Which one?
On the power play. So the interference on Schwenke doesn't get called.
All right.
And they score on a 5-on-3 power play.
Right.
Changed the whole momentum of that
remember
third
that?
period. Because then it made it 4-2.
Right.
And they score on another power play to make it 4-3.
I do vaguely remember that. Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's
Still
tough
though.
game out there.
Yeah, it is.
no,
It is.
no,
Yeah,
that's
Get
right.
some bounces.
yeah. Put the puck in, keep it out. You win the game.
Get
Does
pucks deep.
Adrian have a lot of guys heading out?
They've got, like they said, they have some guys that have moved on and have signed contracts in
but
in the federal.
They're just such a well-oiled
They are.
machine, right? Like, we talked about this in, the Rock the Rink After Dark part. That literally Coach Estalos he's won 3 titles now, but he's not made the Final Four only once.
Really?
In his 8-year tenure.
And 2, they have guys that were healthy scratched that probably had like 10 goals.
Yeah.
Like that was their depth, So they have guys that are healthies that on most teams in the league would probably be a top 6 forward. It's just silly. Yeah, they'll be right back.
It
there
seems
next
like
year.
he's created a culture of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you have to come to practice every day and put in the work, or
Right.
you don't make the lineup. So,
Yeah.
and obviously it was successful this year.
For sure. Now is Ducotny's back? That's a big question.
Yes, he is.
So he's good. Like I think he takes the belt as, in my mind, as top goalie in the league.
Right.
And coming into next season. So that's they could back to back it very easily. It's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. A lot of fun to watch. Ready for September already. All right, moving on now here. Boy, I can't believe I'm actually saying this.
Yeah.
I haven't said this in years. But
I think it's a misprint.
yeah, right. Yeah, fake news. Lady Flames fall in the Final Four. This was a wild one. You could say they got goalied. However you want to spin this, and we'll talk about it more in depth here in a moment. But they win Game 1, 3-2 over ASU in overtime. They outshot them 73-29. All right, so absolutely insane. Then in Game 2, they lose in double OT to Minot State. Outshot the Beavers 71-42. So that in a nutshell.
144 shots.
Yeah, absolutely insane. Pat, I'll let you kind of run with us for a second. I want to do a quick math calculation here while you speak.
I already did the math calculation. It's on there. It's a note.
So yeah, go into it.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, and this actually worked out that former Coach Forth is here because he actually said something about this in the fall. On one of the ones we had.
Was that fourth or was that Kerr?
This is one of, okay. Well,
I thought, anyway. Let's say it's fourth.
Yeah,
Depends on how it sounds.
Right.
Well, they came away with a weekend win, but they I think only scored like 5 goals. But it was a similar scenario where they had like 130 plus shots. in the comparison. So when they only came up with a short number of goals, it was kind of like you have to have a way to have a better shot selection. So you look at how many shots they had. They only had, out of 144 goals, they only had 4 goals. Right,
144 shots, 4 goals. Yeah,
yes,
I got you.
And that's only effective at a 2.8%.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like in game 1, that's what I was kind of calculate. They're shooting at 4%, so that's like crazy low. And then in game 2 in itself, 1 goal divided by obviously 71 shots. That's
math live.
That's not even. You're not even shooting it at 1.5%. Like that's just.
Yeah, that's tough,
like,
right?
You call it what it is. Yeah, but I think like you were kind of going into, Pat, either Forth or Curry, either one, said earlier this year they have to improve upon that stat, which we're talking about now, and unfortunately they didn't. It bit them.
Now, I will say at one point in between both games, I believe they hit anywhere between 10 to 15 posts.
That still, though, kind of goes into the category of just bearing down.
Right.
Like you have
But
to
it
finish.
also goes into you need some puck luck, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
because one of the goals ASU scored was a puck luck goal.
Well,
yeah. So, and you're kind of like, okay, you know. And I remember when it got 2-1, because I was texting Forth, because he like asked me, you know, because you got to pay to watch the games through Flow.
And since I don't coach, I don't have any money.
But he was like asking me for some updates, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it, because
Yeah.
I had time in between. But like, you could see the belief in ASU when they made it 2-1, because they made it in less than 30 seconds.
Right.
And I was just like, oh man, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And the time kept going down. The way their netminder was playing, I was like, we might lose the first game.
Yeah,
like,
well, it was wild too because you had everyone. I think the finals was going on for men's D2
Yeah.
in the other rink, but it was like intermission before overtime, so
Yeah.
everyone came into that rink and they're like, "Is ASU about to knock out Liberty?"
And probably everybody's cheering for
everyone's
ASU.
pulling for 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Dog story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was crazy. I mean, you have a packed house of people cheering against you, and
Yeah, that's
pretty
wild.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to see it. And it's one of those things that, like, it almost happened last year.
Yeah.
So we were at Nationals, and we were playing Miami, Ohio in the first game.
mm-hmm.
And we were out shooting them something crazy like this, like 60-something to 15. And it's a 1-1 hockey game in the last 3 minutes. And it's like, it statistically gets harder and harder every year to keep winning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had 4 in a row at that point. And then, like, you know, Fussy, she ended up scoring that eventual winner with like 2 minutes left. It's a sigh of relief. And then the next game, we get down 4-1 against Adrian in a semifinal game. And it's like, okay, is now the time that we aren't able to claw our way back and come back? When the girls did, but like every year statistically gets harder and harder to win.
Right.
So
Tell me this, Justin. You've coached and you've gone to many nationals. In the NHL circles, you talk about, okay, a team that goes and wins the cup and they go like back-to-back cups or deep runs, they run out of gas. Like you've played a lot more hockey than anybody else. I know this is a little bit different in the sense that it's not like you're playing 7-game series, but do you feel like with Liberty, this team, having been in so many deep runs and so many emotionally exhausting scenarios too, that finally maybe you just kind of run out of gas at some point?
yeah, I think it's one of those, especially going from the ASU overtime win, like emotions are like leading up to that, like, oh shoot, are we gonna not score that second goal and tie it up?
Yeah.
To make it to overtime, to then playing overtime, scoring in overtime. That's a high sense of relief.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're battling that whole next day against Minot, and then you go to overtime, go to double OT.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of factors
Totally.
that do go in there. But
Yeah.
kudos to Coach Lowe's. I know, talking to the coach at Midland, they both have totally polar opposite views on what their season should look like. As far as I know, the Midland coach and some other coaches in the league, they like to play a lot of games, get the girls a ton of reps, and get them prepared for those, you know, those long runs possibly at nationals, where Coach Lowe's wants to play an appropriately limited amount of games to then prepare, be rested, and be ready to go and peak at the right time.
Right.
But, yeah, there's just a lot of
Yeah.
factors that go into it. But, yeah, I think fatigue, mental, emotional fatigue at the end
Yeah.
there, it's like, yeah,
It's huge.
yeah.
Pat, what's the vibe? Like, can you give me as best you can, what's the vibe around the program? Because obviously these young ladies are used to winning their last game of the season. They have for basically over half a decade, right? So now it finally doesn't happen. What's the feeling around the the program right now?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and you have to circle this question for when Kerr's back on for the offseason
for sure.
talk. But I mean, honestly, I think to me, this should be a chance now to head into the offseason for the first time in a long time, hungrier than you've ever been before, right? Like, and I think there is some optimistic, and it depends who you talk to. Like, I think some people have that. Some people know, like, well, we're losing a fair amount of bodies, and like I said, we'll talk more about the offseason stuff. But yeah, you're going to bring in a lot of new girls too, so you're going to be a younger team than you've been in quite some time. But I also think that doesn't mean you can't get it done, because Liberty's gotten it done with young teams before too. So I think, let's say the vibe around the program is split, but I lean on the hungry side, right? Like, I think this is a chance now for Liberty to showcase not only why you've been one of the best hockey programs, not just in the ACHA, but literally in all of collegiate athletics at any level, right? And showcase why you're that big of a program, and like, because you're still returning some very strong, impactful players that can make a difference for next year. And for some of them, go into one, like Keith, right? Gained a ton of experience with this last little bit of a run. Like, for her, I think her confidence should be high, because she played well in conference. Played well in the stretch before conference when they went on a good run, and then also she had a great national tournament. Like, it's unfortunate that it ended the way it did, but I mean,
well, the truth is she only let in 3 goals in 2 games. Like, that's not half bad.
No. So, and also too, the last goal that was let in the double overtime, not on her, right? Like, which you'll see this clip right now. But like, you could see the defense kind of all eyes went to the puck handler, leaving her girl wide open on the back door. Right, so like, there was not a ton really she could have done on that play, and that girl was wide open. It would have been more on her, like, how do you miss that goal? So
those are tough. And I was texting with Pat again the whole time, and I told him, I mean, it's kind of a thing that, like, hey, you're either going to score in the first 4 minutes of overtime or the very last 4. I feel like people come out hot, and then if the pucks don't go in, they kind of reserve and like, okay, let's not now make mistakes. And then at the end, like, just different mental lapses in judgment. I think you start to puck watch, and then somebody strikes. But as far as going off of that question, I think you just have to be extremely optimistic and encouraged. Like, the girls still played good hockey.
Yeah,
look at those shots. Like,
that's true.
They're dominating each game, and again, like, it's a tough game. Like, you don't always get the bounces. And I know Coach Lowe's, he's always extremely motivated, and he hates to lose more than he likes to win. So I think now that he's just, he's going to take his month off mentally, can't think about hockey, and then just get refocused and just reach out again to those handful of recruits coming in. And I think the girls too, and I was texting with them a little bit, but it's really cool to see a group of girls that have been so winning in these last 5 years, to have the maturity to see it as a bigger picture, as far as like, the glory still goes to God.
That's awesome.
And then just seeing their humility, even in loss, and in Coach Lowe's too, just being above reproach and just congratulating those teams that, get the job done. And I think the message still seems that it's bigger than the girls. It's bigger than it's about Jesus. So I think it's really cool to see that even after a loss. But yeah, motivated as heck moving forward, I think.
Yeah, and I also think it's easy when you have a team like them who's won so many titles for it to be like, oh, someone else has it this year. It's not that big of a deal that they don't come away with it. But even just, having to go down the tunnel and talk to the girls after they lost and interview them, I mean, it was tough. They took it hard. And so I think it can't be discounted just because they've won so many titles, how hungry they were for this one. And so that's why I agree, Pat, with what you said. Like, the vibe around this team is, I think it's going to make them want it even more. So I think, that's one thing. And then also just the shot differential again. This tournament being at all the games, it was kind of fun to like stand right by the glass and get to like be right by the other team's goaltender. Haley Beaver, the Minot's goaltender, I mean, she was just unreal. Just after she was like laying on her back, making incredible saves, and just like getting to look in her eyes every single time she got up after a crazy save. I mean, she had the game of her life. So, I mean, both goaltenders did, ASU and Minot. And they know they need to come out and do that when you play Liberty. Like, you're coming out to play the game of your life, and they did that. So there's that. But overall, I agree with what you said, Pat. I think they're going to be super, super hungry for that win next year.
All right, Men's Division 2 time. And again, this is a different beast in Men's Division 2 with the pool play that starts out beforehand. So Liberty fails to make the Final Four, but really kind of like the comeback kids in this one for the beginning 2 games at least. They would win game 1 versus Providence after falling down by 2 and come back and win it 4-3. Then they'd win game 2 versus Army 6-3. They'd be down in that one too by a goal, I believe.
They were down 1-0 after the first.
Yeah. And then eventually would lose to Lindenwood in overtime. Let's just jump straight to game 3 because that's what everybody was kind of had their eyes on in this pool, and they knew it was like number 1 in the nation versus number 3 in the nation, Liberty being number 3. And unfortunately, the Flames so close. This is a talented team that we've been saying. Pat, you've been saying you thought this was the year, and so like a goal away from potentially being the year as you head into the Final Four with the golden goal if you got it.
Yeah, and I think it's tough too because Indiana ends up winning versus Miami. Right? So you're kind of like a team. They played, I believe, Miami 3 times, won all 3 by at least 2 or 3 goals. So you're like, oh my goodness, okay. So and they took down the giant FGCU,
right?
Miami, Ohio, and then Indiana played a very strong, systematic and defensive game versus Lindenwood, right? Yeah. They matched their physicality, and I think that was the huge thing. But in that Lindenwood game, I mean, just some of it was puck luck, right? Yeah. Like that goal that made it 2-2, that one I think even's gone, right? Like
and Liberty was leading 2-1 going into the third for everybody.
Or they were leading 2-1 going into the second. They actually got down into the third. They were down 3-2 going into the third. Yeah, like, I mean, that goal hurt them, right? And then it led to, I think, a couple minutes later, Minot's, get it together. Lindenwood, scored on the power play, a big goal. So, and then Liberty found a way, to get the tire, Matley. But yeah, that, because I even was talking to Kerr about that. Out of all the teams that had a loss, that one hurt me the most. Like, watch it. Because I think you knew. And I think they knew, too, we win this game, we're winning the national tournament.
Yeah.
Like, I think they believe if we played FGCU in the final, which is how it would have shaped up, they would have beat them finally this year. And I think you could just see it and feel it in them. Good thing, basically, you're returning most of this team. But the question,
can I pause you really quick right there? Higgins, D2 or D1 next year?
I think he should still be on D2.
Okay.
But I think some people, because, I mean, Jared Matley was the guy in that tournament.
Yeah.
He had 6 points.
Wow.
He scored in every game. Game 2 was the game where Jared Matley really came out. He had 4 points showing in that one.
Matley.
So, like, I mean, I truly think that, I mean, you could see Aaron Higgins maybe getting the call up because he's so young, right? He'll only be a
big
sophomore
body, too.
Right? So, yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I guess it depends on what the class looks like coming in for NC1. But, I mean, if I'm Ben, I'm doing my best sales pitch to Kirk, like, no, you can't take him, right? And giving him
he's not ready.
Well, he doesn't do this well. Like all
can't skate.
Exactly. Yeah. But, I mean, because, like, that line, too, like, of Matley, Higgins, and Mark Paget, the older brother, like, really, they stole the show, right? Like, they were consistent. They did kind of everything you needed them to do on both ends of the ice. So, like, for Liberty, their window's still there. Yeah. But they got to be careful because you have to wonder, is it starting to close, too? Because this is another year where you were thought they could get it done, and unfortunately, they had a heartbreak where they fell short.
Yeah, I feel like the tournament itself in general is encouraging because last year, obviously, it didn't go the way they wanted it from the very beginning. And I was watching the games and keeping updated on Instagram, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's going to happen again. Yeah. Because they were down 3-1 going into the third. And obviously, they found a way, which is awesome. And then it's a tough loss against Lindenwood, but, like, man, you're so close. So I think as a team, like, the only way to do it, to move forward and have an opportunity, is to be encouraged with the little things that you've done. And again, overtime in the first couple minutes, they lose the game. Be aggressive, maybe overly aggressive. Yeah. Miss
Not
assignment.
Even the first couple minutes.
Yeah.
First 30 seconds.
Yeah. So, they're back the other way and get a quick strike. Yeah. So, like, again, like, those are the the little things, I guess, moving forward to focus on. But again, overall encouraging tournament for that team, I believe.
Yeah, and like we said, kind of like with the ladies talking about some puck luck. Unfortunately, Linden would have got some puck luck in that second game, right? Like the goal that tied it to make it 2-2, and kind of even not the goal. The shot was great. The pass to the shot, though, you're kind of like, how did he get that there?
Yeah.
Like, and then guy had a wide open net. There was no way he was gonna miss. So like, but now I think for the team, hopefully optimism, because you still return a very seasoned group. The one thing though with them, which we will talk about, like, you're gonna have to figure something out with your decor, because you're gonna lose. I believe they're losing a lot of guys. That's the hit they're taking.
Yeah, I was trying to think of all the guys like. Mulder, is he back?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So you're losing.
Mulder, Poulin, both Hawks, potentially Kent. So basically, like what we just named, top 4D.
Yeah,
right? Like
that's a big
right.
Yeah. Luckily, D1 has about 8 guys. All right.
So, question.
We can play that game after hours. As we turn our attention, men's Division 3, unfortunately, disappointing showing for them at AAU Nationals. They go 0-3 in pool play with losses to Clemson, Vandy, and Bishops. 13-10 overall on the year. Is it okay to say it was a weird season? Like, it really felt like they didn't start playing until like late October. Then they had a stretch, but then there's Christmas break. You play some games in the spring and like, boom, the season's over. Like it was just it felt like a weird year that didn't really have a flow to it for them.
Yeah, I think it's tough. A lot of growing pains, I think, this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So 2 new coaches, first time ever coaching anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just learning, for them also learning like, hey, how do I want to be as a coach?
Yeah, for sure.
Systematically, what do we want to implement?
Mm-hmm.
And then also you have a new group of players as well trying to figure out these coaches, playing for a new system, new coaches. So I think, and then we have somebody who's coaching that used to play like as soon as last year. So I feel like this year, as obviously it's a very disappointing nationals and conference result, but I think the coaches and the team kind of say like, oh, I think we all can agree on the few holes in the big glaring issues in the locker room / what we've done on the ice. And I think moving forward next year, they should be encouraged with, I think, the group of talent that they have and just trying to find some unity in there. And moving forward, I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, that's which I think you two could talk more about that dynamic. Like, how tough is that, right? Like, you have Wagner, who probably knew some of those guys from his D2 days, right? Like, I probably didn't play with them, but they were around on the program. And then Coach Ross, like you just said, he played with a good chunk of this team last year. So, like, trying to now switch gears to one for them as a coach, but then the rest of the guys, like, oh, I got to listen to this guy because he's my coach now, right? Like, that's probably an interesting and weird shift dynamic for player and coach.
I had a situation like Coburn back in the day. So Brandon Coburn, who was a 5-year captain for the D3 program, then coached the following season. And it was, I think, smoother for him. Well, I guess I shouldn't, I don't even know. Was Ross captain his last year?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So similar situation in which you go to it. Now, one thing that I kind of gave Coburn the leeway with is just to go from being the player to the coach. It's obviously a transition, and the respect level is a different animal altogether. And so his first practice out, I was like, oh, this is a different side of this cat I haven't seen before. And just in terms of being a little bit nitpicky and hard on him, but it was the right move because he battled for that. You're gonna respect me as a coach now, not as just your captain. And it worked out for him. But again, it just depends on the guy's personality and the team itself and how that works. And I'm sure stepping onto the bench from being a player is I can't imagine what that's like.
Yeah, no, and I think kind of like you touched on, you have to figure out real quick what kind of coach you're going to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works, and sometimes it maybe doesn't.
Right.
And so, again, each situation's a little bit different. But I think as far as just being more consistent, I think I talked to Coach Wagner a couple weeks ago, and it's just we show up for the Friday and we don't show up for the Saturday.
Right.
So just finding that consistency in the effort level in those games for the players, I think that's just the tricky part of men's D3 hockey especially, I think.
I think too, scheduling wise, it has to be more consistent. It's really hard to go play a weekend series and be off for like 3 weekends in a row. And I know, for Coach Wagner, I think it's difficult in the sense that your first year, you haven't made connections. Like the scheduling aspect is very different in that sense. And D3 is kind of like the Wild Wild West, or AAU is. I don't know. Like I'm sure it's similar in that regard. It's the same programs, and a lot of them are student run. So it's not easy. Like it's a big undertaking to kind of set up your management style. Truthfully, it's not even coaching. It's just like the aspect of being an athletic director, essentially, for the small team to see how that all plays out. So.
Yeah, and when you're hired, in September, and you accept a schedule that's 75% made, and you kind of like make some phone calls.
Yeah,
especially other teams that again also have a limited budget of travel, and like, hey, we can come to you, but like, oh, we can't afford to come to you.
Right.
So like you're kind of stuck in a sense, and you just have to do the best with what you have.
Yeah. All right. Women's Division II end the season on a high. Lady Flames would lose Game 1 versus Providence 4-1, but they're happy they're at Nationals, Pat. That's a big thing.
Well, it's not even that. They got their first 2 program wins ever.
Right.
First one came versus a rival too, right?
Yeah,
Delaware, when they were down 3-1 in that game, and you're kind of like, oh wow, like they found a way to come back. And then St. Thomas, they were the number 2 in the Central,
right?
And you have a solid showing versus them, beating them 2-0. So I think for them, you're excited about your future too, because most of this team's coming back. Another team in the Liberty program that's very young, returning a lot of bodies. And I think for Coach Leone, have to be excited, because I'm sure she already has probably anywhere from 4 to 8 girls that she has on the line that she plans to bring in next year to take them to that next level and hopefully get them out of pool play.
Yeah,
terrific.
I think just talking with Coach Leone and with the players after their third game, I mean, it's exactly what you just said. We are so excited for next season. We feel like we had a great showing here. They were upset they didn't win that first game, but obviously you're walking away like, we're happy we were here and that we showed up and played well. Like that young talent, Cor Williams, 3 goals in pool play. I mean, she had a terrific national tournament. So I think that, overall you're walking away happy and really, really excited for next season.
Yeah. And I think for them too, like, we kind of touched on it, how big going to nationals just helps your program. But for them too, like, you got to think, and it's kind of weird to say that they felt the effects of COVID harder than I think some other teams. But like, you have to believe, like, because in 2020, at that time was probably the best team at women's D2. They don't go to nationals because it's canceled. The next year, they don't even have a season. So like some key players don't come back for that 21-22 season that you're hoping to come back, because they just decide, well, I'm just going to finish online at Liberty. And then so it took them a couple of years to really get things going. And now with the youth movement that they have, like, this is a team, I think, that really has a strong future heading into next season.
Yeah, and it was also cool just getting to, Kylie Mebbs, she had been hurt for a while. She came in, shut them out, and that was great. And then also, I think this team just has some really special leadership. Just talking to their captain and their alternate captains after the game, just everyone so kind. They just seem like they lead this team so well. And I was talking to Coach Leone about her seniors that are graduating, and just instant tears. They are so special. And she walked me through every single player, what makes them, such an incredible person, an incredible leader on the group. And so I just think that the culture of this group seems really, really cool. So it makes you, number one, just happy for them that they had such a great tournament, but also excited because they were all excited. They just seemed like they couldn't wait to get their skates back on and start getting ready for next year.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me is that all 3 goalies played in a game. So, like, what a cool thing that you as a coach, you have confidence that all 3 goalies can possibly win you a game. And, again, like, 1 game short, but it's super encouraging from going, I don't know, like you said, 3 or 4 years without even making a tournament to almost making it to a Final Four. So it's really encouraging.
Yeah, definitely a big step forward for this Women's Division II program. And again, Rena Leone, I'm sure hardest working coach at the D2 level that there is. Or just the recruits she brings in, good for her, and puts in a ton of time and effort towards this team. So,
question for you, Rhett.
Ask me.
Was Williams making D1 or D2 next year?
You know what? I'll be honest. If I had watched some women's Division 2 this year, I would give you an answer right away. But I'd be totally just be blowing hot.
I
there,
will.
so.
I will say she's good enough.
Is she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Former coach, and watching her this year at the Division 2 level, I think she skates well enough, passes well enough. And
I don't think Rena likes that you said that.
oh yeah,
because like they're
Yeah.
let's see who's listening.
like Cora Williams, and obviously even this year I thought Izzy Crossman might get the nod up, but I think Rena was happy she did it, and don't put ideas in Chris Lowe's head, right? Like
She's got size too. Just add that to the
Yeah, all the D2 and D3 coaches that listen to this are like, shut up. Stop talking right now.
Exactly.
All right. Well, hey, next week, bit of a different pod for everybody out there. The Dondi.
That's right.
Is coming on.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Big, exciting pod. He'll come on. Then the one after that, we'll start getting into the off-season news and talk about the select camp coming up in a few weeks as well. So, I know we talked last year. That was when we had the big signing of players for men's D1, and there's a select camp for the women's too, so it might be a bigger signing as well. But I feel like they have a lot of their kids penciled in. The stories just aren't fully released yet. So, so should have a lot of off-season news here in a couple weeks as well.
Exciting times. All right. Lots more Rock the Rink to come before the summer hits. Make sure you stay with us. We'll see you next time.